Well, hello, welcome back, ladies and gents, and here we are. And I have amazing Sarah here again. She is back.
Yay!
I'm so happy. I'm not gonna introduce her because you already know her, and if you want to know her, who she is, you can go back to the replay. And but she can also introduce herself again. Here's Sarah. She is a um, an amazing mother and an intuitive coach, of course. And I asked her to come back in this second episode of our topic today, which is heart and the mind, because this is huge for me because we talk about a lot about labels, and we had just had a chat a while ago about labels and how much we are attached to labels, either you're a man, woman, or a children, right? Like, this is mine, my toys, it's all mine. For children and for men, like, hey, I'm the man in the house. I mean, no offense, it's just like, those labels, like, man has to do this, man to do this, oh, man, don't cry, this, here and that, because that's how the word labeled them. And then for women, we are attached being like the motherhood. But again, more details about that in our podcast here. And Sarah, welcome back. Ah, man, we're gonna go deep with this, like heart and versus the mind. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Let's get started.
Awesome. So, the behind the story about the heart and the mind for me, specifically, is that it's a long journey, right? It's a long journey from here to here, and not many people get it because most of us, being human, we operate from here,
Mhm.
but then we forget about our heart. We were taught to suppress our emotions, and emotions are weak, or crying is a sign of weakness, or when we express it is a sign of, oh, you're too emotional, or don't listen to your heart, it will deceive you. But how do we know if we were deceived if we don't even know what heart is about, and stuff like that? So my question for I receive a lot of questions about, especially men, like, or women. It's like a fight between genders, like man versus woman, or woman versus man, or yin and yang, right and left, or black and white, heart and mind, right? So according to your own experiences, what have you observed as an intuitive coach about the difference between heart and mind when we operate in a real world situation? I mean, coming from an intuitive experience that you had before, when we had that podcast, that you had this experience about the 5D world, then you come back to the 3D world, like, wow, like, tell me what do you say about the heart versus the mind?
That's a great question. So, I think what we get caught up in is in our mind. We get stuck
Mm,
in thought loops. We can self inflict anxiety,
mm,
depression, fear. And what ends up happening is because we have all of these thoughts and not all of them are true, we are still making excuse me, we're still making decisions based on those thoughts, whether
yeah,
or not they're true. And so if we get stuck in a thought loop or we are in a place of uncertainty, we will grab hold onto the first label or activity or thing that allows us to feel safe. And when we feel safe, our mind calms down. And so we correlate those two, is that if I make a comfortable decision, whether or not it's good for me or not, because that's what we're used to, I make a comfortable decision, that's going to keep me safe. And
oh,
what happens is when we move from our minds into our hearts, it can still feel scary because
yeah,
it's uncomfortable. It's not what we're used to, and it doesn't always make us safe. And so it's a matter of making our heart space the safe space.
mm,
And it's important also not to get stuck in one or the other. right? We're
Right.
not meant to just be in our hearts or just be in our minds. There has to be kind of a balance there.
Balance.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it takes it back to the scales. And we talked a little bit about that before of like keeping everything in balance and making sure that it's not just one or the other. But what I've observed is that people make a lot of decisions. They say a
Mm.
lot of things and do a lot of things because of what's going on in their minds.
Mm.
And they're not always taking the time and the
Yeah.
space to
Yeah.
allow their heart to have a say in the conversation as well. And we're more reactive rather than responsive. So when we
Oh.
react, we have something happen, and without missing a beat, we say something or we do something too quick, and oftentimes that can lead into negative situations. If we give ourselves a beat, a few seconds, a few minutes, a day or 2 days, or whatever you need to do to make a decision or to take part, if you give yourself that time, now you're responding because you're getting out of your mind and you're allowing your heart to talk in the conversation. And then now you're going to have more of a balanced decision that's made, or a balanced thing you want to say, because you've allowed everybody an opportunity to speak within you, right? And
Mhm.
so we can make logical decisions, but they don't always turn out great, right?
Yeah.
Just because it's logical, that's what everyone says. Well, that's the logical, that's the safe
Doesn't
decision.
mean it's right.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's because we didn't listen to our hearts. We get 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, and we're like, oh, I really don't like this job as much as I thought I would, or I
Mm.
really don't really enjoy this relationship as much as I thought I would, because we didn't take the time to allow our heart to have a say.
Oh, I love that. I'm right on point, my dear. I mean, I love this because we're going deeper, and I love deep talks, deep conversation, because it hits the point, to the point that it makes you think. It makes you like question yourself, powerful question. Because if you don't ask yourself powerful questions, you go back in a loop and call it insanity, and then you think you living life, you're just existing. Actually, you're not really living life, you're just existing. I mean, can I be brutal with this? Like, can I be brutal in this podcast about the truth? Like, sometimes we think we're living life 75 times for 75 years and call it living, but we're actually just existing, because it's based on, that's my observation, based on just the ego or the mind, and forgetting the heart, and thinking it's right, because it's all about labels. This is me, this is who I am, but is it really who you are? How about, you know, let's combine it with the heart. Like you said, it has to be that balance, right? And without the heart, like, who are you without the heart? Who are you without the spirit speaking to you through your heart? You're just the mind and the body. The mind and the body without the heart is, to me, is not, I don't feel alive with that. So why do you think that people are leaning towards safety in with their own journey from the mind to the heart? Because I feel like, for my observation, they put more trust in their safetyness. Is it safe to go through? If I'm gonna discover what my heart say, is it safe? Why do you feel like they're clinging towards safety, that safetyness?
It, a lot of it, from what I've observed and what I've personally experienced, is that somewhere along the way, leading from our heart had a negative consequence, or
Yeah.
we were taught that that's not the way to go.
Mm.
That's not how everyone else does it. So why don't you just do it how everyone else does? And
Mm.
one of the things, so in one of the programs I use with my clients, it's called the Courageous Journey, and we go deep in asking questions, because oftentimes we don't even know what questions to ask ourselves, right? And so I was able to channel all of these questions and use my intuitive abilities to pull forward these questions that people can ask themselves to really get to know what their heart is actually wanting to say.
Yeah.
And then we start moving into activating their throat chakra, allowing them to use their voice
Mm.
to speak up and say, hey, you know what, like, this isn't really for me anymore, or like, how do you get to those places, because it takes a certain amount of bravery, right? And but I think what makes people feel safe is that's what's kind of cloaked us. Like imagine yourself just wearing this cloak since you were a child, and it has grown with you, and people
Mhm.
have stitched on labels all over the place.
Wow. Yeah.
And with those labels, we feel safe because they've been given to us. We have memories, we have experiences, and then we
Yeah.
allow those to, but then over time, the cloak gets heavier and heavier to wear, and it's really hard to take it off.
Take it
It's
off. Yeah.
shedding, right? You're taking
Yeah.
the cloak off and saying, you know what? I want to be a new version of me. How do I do
Mm.
that? And you have to start either peeling off some of those labels that you
I
don't
like
want
that.
anymore,
Yeah.
or you have to take the whole cloak off, which can feel very overwhelming. It's unsettling because your whole world of what you've created around you, your
Yeah.
reality around you, is built off of those labels. So
Yeah.
when you take that off, what do you have left? And people often think, I have nothing left. But it actually is your own freedom. You give yourself your freedom. You set yourself free by taking those labels off and saying, you know what, I'm not going to live by the label. I will live by my core values, and those are the most important. And then if people want to attach labels because it makes them feel safe, then fine, right? You want to label me mother, fine. I'd rather be called guide, but people don't walk around going, it's, happy
Yeah.
guides day. Like,
Yeah.
like it's the labels is what makes people feel safe in their current reality. It's what they can assign a knowing to,
Yeah.
right? And when we know, it's the unknown that scares us, truthfully. Like people
It
have
is.
that experience with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It's what people believe in ghosts, they believe in UFOs, they believe in, whatever is out there.
Yeah.
And that unknown of what can happen, death even, is an unknown. People are
Hmm.
afraid of death, and it's
Yeah.
the unknown. It's not knowing what happens, right?
Yeah. You're
So
right.
if we don't have a label, it becomes an unknown, and that becomes
Hmm.
scary.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
if we can get comfortable in that space of like taking this label off, taking that label off, you can associate to that label and understand and honor it for what it is, but we don't have to hold on to it so tightly and be terrified to let it go because we're not going to die. Like, just because we don't have that label assigned to us,
Yeah.
uh, we still have value and we still have worth, even if that label isn't assigned to us.
Wow. I love it. Like, yeah, it's, I mean, you're so right. It's the attachment style to the labels over time from childhood to adulthood to, and call it living, right? And yeah, and let's talk about motherhood. Like, I want to bring this out because I'm a mother to your mother too, right? Like, from one mother to another, why again, like, motherhood is a long journey, raising a kid, and then yet within ourselves we are also raising our own child in us without us knowing it.
Yeah.
Even though we call ourselves mother, like, who am I really this role? Like, what is the motherhood taught you? Like, and those are my questions to myself, like, who am I as a mother? And yeah, so why are we so attached to the title motherhood? And then when the kids live, because right now I'm an empty nester, right? Right, my kids are all grown kids, and then it's like for me grieving from the new mom to the empty nester. Like motherhood will always be there, but why are we still attached to that kind of label just to say that's my truth? Is that really our truth?
Right. I think it's a sense of identity. I think if we have a sense of identity that gives us value, right? And so
Mm,
if we're stay-at-home moms, I've experienced that myself. It's a struggle to mentally
yeah.
get to a place of feeling like you have value because you don't have anything to show for it, right? We're not
Mm,
making a paycheck. We're not,
yeah.
and that has been a constant battle, and it's been a conversation that's been going on for decades
Yeah.
about how much more we actually would make if they gave us a salary for it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's just, it almost seems devalued in society. And so
Yeah.
we want to feel like it matters, and it's a sense of identity that we can live by and make it the best, right? We will pour ourselves into it. We will give it
Yeah.
100%. We will do it better than our mothers did.
Yeah.
And that is our sense of pride, so that when we get to the end of our lives, we know that we did something that left a mark on the world, that we mattered somehow for
Yeah.
someone. And it's taking on that role of mother. But what we have to be careful of is not to over attach to that, because then we get lost in that identity. And
Mm.
what can happen is, over time, if we're not still exploring ourselves during that period where we have children in our homes,
Yeah.
when you become an empty nester, that sense of identity is gone, because all the things that showed that you were a mother, that like outwardly expressed I'm a mom because I've got these two kids with me, or
Mm.
I've you can tell that I haven't slept in 4 days, like like all of these things that like make us mother,
Yeah.
that we can outwardly show that we're pouring everything into it, is now gone, because now they're
Yeah.
off being adults and we don't have children at home anymore. If you got too attached to that identity,
Mm.
now you have no identity. Now what? And then women can go into crisis, because what do we do now that we're not mother as the identity?
Mm.
And so it's really important to stay in touch with ourselves during that motherhood journey,
Yeah.
not to just solely rely on that to feel worthy. I think we need
Yeah.
to find that worthiness within us, and
Yeah.
that we are enough just because we exist. Now that we are mothers, all that does is just elevate it even further. It's
Exactly.
not that you didn't have worth or value before, and that you
Mm.
only have worth and value because you're a mother, but you have even more now because you're a mother.
I love that. Beautifully said. Amazing. you know, well, I hope there's a mothers listening out there about this, that you are worthy no matter what season you are in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, motherhood will always be there. And at the same time, take care of you, be gentle with yourself, and yeah. And speaking of like the heart speaking to our mind, especially in, let's talk about business, like coaches or consultants, psychologists, or again, or engineers. Like when you go to a networking event and they ask you to introduce yourself, you, uh, you know what I mean? Like you introduce yourself. Oh, my name is this and that. I am a coach. I'm a real estate. I'm a lawyer. And blah blah blah. But why do we have to? I mean, it's important to say those, but we're missing the point. And sometimes I'm changing my language as well, like how I introduce myself, and stuff like that. So again, the mind versus the heart. Like, do I say it from the heart, or do I say it from my mind, who I am, to introduce myself to the world? And then there's another thing that I call it, imposter syndrome
Mm-hmm.
kicks in, right? Like, so how do we lead from the heart space so that our mind can speak well, articulately our truth, who we are when we go out there networking ourselves?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a way to keep other people feeling safe. I think we've gotten into a place of just making everybody else feel good.
Mm,
We want to make other people feel good naturally,
yeah.
but like when you're at a party or an event or something and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" It's like one of my least favorite questions.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten into the habit of saying, "I make people uncomfortable and I trigger them." Like, you ask me what I do. If ask me
I
who I,
love that.
and when we attach it to a label,
Yeah.
that's what makes everybody feel comfortable. Oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, I'm a this,
Mm,
right? Because now
yeah.
what we've done is we placed ourselves in a box.
Yeah.
And if you find that you say that, it's really hard to talk up out of that box. If I
Hmm.
say, "Oh, I'm a teacher," "Oh, my mom was a teacher, and how long have you been teaching?" And teaches it's, and then you just
Yeah.
get stuck in a conversation about teaching.
The
You're like, "That's
ripple.
not
Yeah.
the only thing I do. I do so many other things."
Yeah.
And so that question is so limiting to who
It
you really are.
is.
And so if you think about that, it's limiting you up here in the mind,
Mm.
right? So we need to think of a response that brings it back into the heart. And that's where you lead, right?
Yeah.
I'm a change maker. I'm a
Yeah, that's right.
networker. I'm a speaker. I'm someone who likes to make a difference in the world. If you
Yeah.
change the sentence in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, now you're leaving it open. Now we're not stuck in a box that we have to talk ourselves out of and go, but
Yeah.
I also, I've also written children's books, and I also,
Yeah.
I love to hike. And
Yeah.
because then you can really get to know somebody, and you remove that safety net, but it
Yeah.
allows that space to be vulnerable.
I
And when
love
you
it.
can open that up, you invite
Yeah.
people into that vulnerability, and you can go a lot deeper, a lot quicker. Now we're not talking
Exactly.
about the weather or
Yeah.
your, oh, there we go. Or your grandma or your grandmother's, method of teaching from 20 years ago. Now we're talking about real things going on, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a hot topic. It can just be, oh, tell me more about that. Like, it can
Mm-hmm.
be an engaging conversation when you
Exactly.
can move down into the heart space about who you
Well,
really are and what you want to
yeah.
say.
Whoa, bravo, bravo. I love this. I love it. Yeah, and I mean, your own point is like, when are we gonna talk from a heart space so that we can have really a real deep conversation? And this is what my podcast is about. Is like, voice out your truth. Let's talk about truth, man. Like, let's no more talking about the weather. Like, boring. I mean, really, it's just that let's spice it up a bit more about the truth, the heart, and the mind, and that's what I love about the heart. It's like, 'cause it brings up more about you, who you truly are, and that's when trust comes in. We welcome trust when we talk about from our heart space. And but how do someone get from the mind to the heart? Can you share a little bit about your tools? Not everything, but just what works. What is the universal way to share with someone struggling out there? Like, how do I even do that apart from asking myself powerful question? How do I even start from here to here?
Yeah. There's three really big things you need to do. Number one, you got to get grounded. A
Hmm.
lot of people don't spend enough time putting bare skin on bare earth. We have to get our feet into the sand, into the mud, into the dirt, and ground ourselves,
Yeah.
because we walked this planet a long time without shoes. And I'm not saying you need to go walk on glass or bad areas, but what I am saying is we need to be more connected with nature. And so the more you can get out into nature, that's going
Mm-hmm.
to just quiet the mind and allow your heart to talk to you. And that's the first thing. You need to give it 10 to 15 minutes at least to
Mm-hmm.
bring you back into your body,
Yeah.
because we can get caught up in our minds and it's all just thoughts.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about how our thoughts are not always true. um, the second thing I would recommend doing is, if you're stuck in a thought loop about something just happened at work,
Yeah.
or a friend messaged you and it didn't feel good, we could sit there and ruminate and be in thought loops about past memories from the job or past memories from the friendship, or they said this, so maybe I should respond that way. And now we feel our blood pressure is rising, our chest is getting tight, we're exhausted, we're physically tired. The way to get from your from your mind into your heart space is new thought.
Mm.
Ask your subconscious mind, give me a new thought.
Mm.
And as you see it to creep in, or maybe it'll give you a new thought about the scenario. Nope, new thought. Just
Oh,
ask it to
yeah.
give you a new thought. And
Yeah.
so the way you're going to have to practice this by doing something that you do love doing. Maybe it's coloring, maybe it's a
Yeah.
craft, maybe it's a activity outside. Like, whatever you love doing, give yourself the opportunity to go do that activity and then ask for new thoughts. If it starts to creep back in, maybe you're doing some kind of painting and it starts to creep back in, that conversation from work, and you're just like, oh, I don't want to think about this anymore. Just tell your brain, give me a new thought. And in this practice, you're going to find that it actually does give you a new thought. It's sort of like the computer freezes and is like, wait, what? I need to do what now? And you're disrupting the pattern. So you're breaking the loop that you're stuck in just by asking
Mm,
for a new thought,
yeah.
because it's not what you're used to. And so it's going to disrupt the pattern and you're not going to get stuck in that loop. The third thing I would recommend doing is to get from your mind into your heart space is meditating. And I know people have different feelings about meditation,
Yeah.
but I think people have this misconstrued notion that it's
Mhm.
sitting quietly in a space with your own thoughts, just breathing in and out for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be. People
No.
can be meditating on a bike. People can be meditating when they're
Yeah.
running. People can be meditating when they're painting. People can be meditating
Mhm.
doing a lot of different things
Or
because they're in
singing.
flow.
Yeah.
And really it's just about creating that flow where you get lost in time. You don't even know what time it
Yeah.
is anymore. And you you're in a meditative state,
Yeah.
and it's a matter of disconnecting from the thing you're thinking about
Yeah.
into like almost a state of nothingness. It's almost a state of like having no thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's really challenging to do just by meditating itself. But there's tons of free guided meditations. I have some on my website, on my
Yeah.
YouTube page. Like there's free meditations everywhere that are guided. So if you don't know how, just start with that. Start with
Mhm.
5 minutes and build up to 15 minutes, right? Like,
Right.
but
Yeah.
meditating is going to be a really quick way to get from here into your heart.
Yeah. Oh wow, beautiful. And speaking of the language of the mind and the language of the heart, because both have different languages. So how do we start making peace with both elements, the heart and the mind?
Recognizing they have different voices.
Yep.
our our mind has a very different voice. It can be
Mhm.
very critical, it can be very um concerned for our safety, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing. It actually
Yeah.
does keep us safe. We don't need to shut off and ignore our mind completely.
Yeah.
But they have different words, right?
Yeah.
I think this would make a better sense. This is the most logical. This is the most reasonable choice,
Yeah.
right? That's all vocabulary of our mind.
Yeah.
When we're in our heart space, it's I feel this, I'm uncomfortable, I'm
Mhm.
sad, I'm lonely, I'm
Yeah.
and you hear the word
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am, this is where we get into our heart
Yeah.
space.
That's right.
And I am angry, it's an emotion. And
Yeah.
so our heart is saying the I am, our mind is using different vocabulary that has been placed there by other people or ourselves over
Yeah.
time and experience.
Yeah. I love that. The heart says, I am. And
Yes.
then the mind says, well, I'll do this. you know, instead, yeah. So is the making peace with both the yin and the yang, and and yeah, so the heart and the mind. So for you, what would you say to the people about their heart space? Like, how will they know their heart is speaking to them?
It's really getting in tune with your body, to be honest with you.
Mm, yeah.
When somebody asks you to go to a party,
Oh.
if you wait a moment, not doing it to make them happy, but really listening into your body, and you're
Mm,
just like, no, it's a full no. Your body's like, this is not the day for that.
mm-hmm.
You have to listen to it because your heart is going to feel betrayed if you do it anyway.
Oh, I love the word. Yeah.
And we
Wow.
talked last time about being responsible to things. And
Mm,
this is what I'm talking about. Is like just because you feel like responsible, you have to participate. You're
yeah.
betraying your own heart because your heart is telling you no.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say you always need to say no. You're gonna feel really enlivened by something. If it's
Yeah.
really meant for you, you're gonna be like, yeah, that's actually kind of exciting. It's a little scary, but it's exciting. Or, like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a little bit of a thrill, and your heart. will tell you, your body is going to tell you
Mm,
exactly how to respond to those situations. And so it's tuning into the body, really.
mm. Wow, amazing. Like, yeah, I'm not like we mentioned before, like it's all people will lean towards safety again to label it, or they always go back to that, therefore they don't trust the unknown, what they don't understand. And and it's a really a long journey from the mind to the heart.
Mhm.
And my next question is, what is the truth about our heart that is telling all of us in general?
I think it's our soul. I think our soul and our spirit is in our heart space and just below it. I think it's the thing that's the driving force, right? Like without our
Mm,
heartbeat,
yeah,
we literally cannot survive.
yeah,
On just a very literal sense, right?
yeah.
We cannot live without a heartbeat, without a heart.
Mm,
They can keep us alive by using machines to pump our heart for us.
yeah,
But again, that's not really living.
yeah.
And so it's tuning into that heart. It's tuning into what is our heart trying to say? What is our soul trying to tell us
Mm,
about what our purpose is, or about what connections that need to be made, or
yeah,
connections that need to be released?
yeah.
It's really allowing the soul to speak through
Wow,
us as
wow.
an expression of us.
I love.
And we get to determine what that is. And that's how we start to make changes in our lives, because
Mm-hmm.
we're listening to the soul. What does our soul came here to do? What
Yeah,
is it like? Who do we want to be in touch with? How do we want to move forward, so that by the end of our lives, when we're looking back, we don't have regrets. We did live, we didn't just exist. I talk
yeah,
about that all the time. So when you said that earlier, I was like, yes, we're not here to exist. We're
yeah,
here to live.
yeah,
And there's a big difference. And if someone is really struggling mentally, it can feel like just existing is enough. And
yeah,
sometimes it is. And you can ask for help to get to a
yeah,
living space. You can
yeah,
be just existing to get you to living,
yeah,
right? But that's where we ask for help to get us to that living place.
yeah.
But it's allowing our soul to guide us in the decisions we make. And maybe you start down a path and you're starting to do something,
Mm-hmm.
and your soul's just like, oh, this is just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Say no, get out of it, find a healthy, happy way
Yeah,
to step out of that part of the path and get back onto your path. And you'll know it's your path. You're going to feel it. Your
yeah.
soul's going to be like, yep, there it is. Keep going because you're on the right one.
Yeah.
And we want to take these little detours because our mind is like, hey, but over
Mm,
here we make more money. Yes, but is that going to make you happier? Is that going to lead you
yeah,
to your
yeah.
purpose? Maybe. We don't know until you try. But then maybe you start going down it, you're like, oh, it was not worth it. It was not worth it. We hear all these stories all the time about these people who go to Wall Street or make a ton of money early on, and they're like,
Mm,
it wasn't for me. I needed to leave it because it wasn't really what their soul was calling them to do. And so there's evidence of this all over the place, of people just leaving certain things behind and following their heart. And you really can't go wrong when you're listening to your soul, because that's what we came here to do. This is what our soul is asking from us, and taking those risks of getting off the safe path because that's where everyone else is, right? Think
yeah.
of it like this, the way like it's coming into me now as I'm channeling this
Okay, go,
is
go,
like
go.
we're all on like this big dirt path,
Yeah,
like a forest road.
yeah,
If you've ever seen a forest road, it's cleared so that trucks, like fire trucks and forestry trucks, can get down them, right?
yeah.
It's big and wide and it's perfectly flat and clear. And well, not every forest road. I'm sure the forestry men are going to be like, come on, Sarah. But you all get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And everybody's on this path. Everybody's walking
Mm-hmm.
back and forth on this cleared path, right? And you're seeing a trail off to the side that looks really interesting, and you're hearing animal sounds, and you're like, I kind of want to know what's over there. That takes you off the safe path into the wilderness, which
Yeah,
is scary because you're
yeah,
off on your own. No one else is going over there. And you're like, you keep looking back like, maybe I should be where everyone else is. And I'm not doing it the way everyone else is. That's scary because you're off on your own. It's not safe. It's not comfortable. And so here you go down this path. You might see things that those people will never see their entire lives, right? You're going to have experiences, you're going to encounter creatures, you're going to have the most beautiful sights to see because you're choosing your own path to step away from what everyone else does. And there's not a true understanding because they're standing on their path watching you and making comments and opinions about how you're going down that. You should be going a little faster, or you need to slow
Yeah.
down, or you need to have that pack
Yeah.
instead of that pack, and
Yeah.
this walking stick instead of that walking stick. They're going to judge, but they're standing on the main path. They're not standing on your path,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
they're judging you from afar. And if you stand there listening to them, you're like, oh, right,
Mm-hmm.
I should do what you say. Now you're slowing down. Now
Yeah.
you're contemplating going back on their path
Yeah.
because
Detour.
that's what's great for them. But it shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
deter you and make you turn around and go back to their path. You need to just keep going and not listen to them,
Yeah.
right? Now, that's not to say wisdom doesn't come along. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, wisdom's going to show up where your path, now you're on your own hiking path and it's off in the forest, and some other wise person, their path comes along next to yours, and now you're walking side by side. You have totally different paths. You're 10 to 15 feet apart, totally different paths, but they're sharing their wisdom about walking the path alone, walking the path that's uniquely yours. That's where
Mm-hmm.
your wisdom's going to come. It's not going to come from the people that are on the flat, pure, the pure road where there's nothing there. It's going to come from the people that are out there in the wilderness trying to find their own way. And that's where you get to invite other people along that path. Do you want to come with me? Because this is my path. And if they don't understand you, they're not meant to walk that unique path with you, right? Go back to the forest path. Go back to the cleared road.
Yeah.
That's where you belong because that's where you want me to go. And I don't want to go there. I want to stay out here doing my thing. And there can be a disconnect there, but if you
Yeah.
listen to your soul, it's going to want you out there on that amazing hiking path.
Yeah. Bravo. Thank you.
I hope that made sense.
It makes sense to me. I don't know about other people, but this will make them question their own path as well. Because there's different scenario here. Like those people who are telling that person to go here and there, left and right. If they're listening into this podcast, I hope you are listening, making sure that if I want to put my 2 cents to it to those people. um I always say, because I went through this myself years ago with some people, that I went through my path and then people telling me this and that, and then I actually confronted those people who were telling me, go here, go there. And I said, you need to be mindful on what you say to others who are going through tough time or figuring their life out, because you are imposing your own fear on me, or your own fear on someone going through their grieving stages, and making sure you're coming from your healed version of yourself and not your own agenda. And those are the things that I always say to people in truth, because what the truth is the truth will always pull you to that path that you're talking about, right? Always pulls you towards it. And and you cannot mess that up. You can only mess it up when it's not your truth, because you're following someone else's path.
Right.
And and to me, to discover that, when I went through that many years ago, when I lost my son 7 years ago, and I was like, why am I trusting their path, their voices, as if it's my path, and stuff like that. So yeah, you really have to filter it, which one is true to you, and follow your heart, and also telling your mind to listen to your heartbeat, your truth in your heart. And then from there, you get to know and fall in love with your new journey. And then you thank those people, thank you for telling me this and that, and thank you for the role that you played for telling me this and that. At the same time, you also thank yourself. Now you know the difference between heart and mind, and without making the mind as an enemy, but as an ally, to
Right.
start navigating and turning the heart desire into reality in the mind. Okay, this is it. Let's make peace together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you're going to
yeah,
find resistance. If it's not for you, you're going to feel resistance. If you're
yeah,
feeling resistance, it's against what your soul is asking. And
exactly.
it's important too to forgive yourself. If
Yeah,
you've been following on a different path that isn't yours, forgive yourself. Don't get mad at yourself. Don't beat yourself up for it.
yeah,
Just start making choices that lead you in a different direction.
yeah,
The self compassion is a really important piece, especially if you're trying to get from existing into living. That can
yeah,
be a really challenging place because you're
yeah.
up here, and like you said, it's a long journey from the mind to the
Long
heart.
journey.
You
Yeah,
have to give yourself time and space to let that happen and forgive yourself for not doing it faster. There's
yeah.
no right way to do it, there's no perfect timing
Labels.
or,
It's all
right?
these
Like,
labels, right? Like the perfect
yeah.
timing and all this stuff. And I want to discuss more about this, but our time is almost up here. I mean, like the heart and the mind, and then I really want to go further about the death and life as well. Like where do you go from here and there with the heart and the mind when you face death, like losing a kid or losing a job or going through divorce and finding new path. Like, is the bottom line for me is love. Like, the linking between heart and mind is how do we love each other?
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah. So what is your final word for our audience here about how do we make peace with ourselves, with, apart from giving ourselves compassion and forgiveness, how do we make peace between two worlds of the heart and the mind?
I think you just said it, is leading with love. Everything
Mm,
starts with love. We don't start in anger and frustration. We
mm.
start with love. Love can be neutral. It doesn't have to
Oh,
be
yeah.
romantic, right?
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't love can show up in so many different, we can
Yeah.
love a pet, we can love an animal, we can love a
Mm,
um an organization, we can love a community, we can love a friend. There's so many
yeah.
ways that love shows up in our world, and I think if we just start with love as neutral, as that is the baseline, then I think everything above that is just fantastic. I call it, I've talked about this before in other ways. It's like it's the icing and the sprinkles on a cupcake.
Yeah.
Like everything above love is just amazing, right? It's bliss,
Mm,
it's contentment, it's joy, it's all of these things. And so it's not beating ourselves up for getting frustrated and angry, but bringing ourselves back into love. And
wow.
when we can come from that space and loving
Mm,
ourselves and understanding that when someone is frustrated and they're talking to us or they're sharing that they're frustrated with us, they love us enough to tell us how their heart is speaking. And
mm,
so it's, even though it's uncomfortable because you're in an argument or it's not going well,
mm.
it's coming from a place of love for you, that they
Oh,
want it to work. And
yeah.
so it's, if you can see that it's from love,
Yeah.
it changes the conversation, because it's not,
Mm-hmm.
if they didn't love you or they didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
try or make it better or anything or fix it, they wouldn't be telling you. Their heart wouldn't be
Exactly.
talking to you. It's all from a place of love. So give yourself that opportunity to see it as love
Yeah.
rather than anger. Keep love at the
Mm.
neutral point, at the middle baseline point, and everything is from that spot.
Wow. All right, on spot again. I mean, yeah. You, well, ladies and gents, if you want to find out more about Sarah and to know the difference between heart and mind in real world situation, how to navigate your life from the heart space and make peace with your mind so that you can really make clear decision, have uh, a loving communications, like, your communication skills start changing, right? Like how you language that one, especially with different relationship with people, like your kids, your siblings, or in business, or in online friends that you've never met before. Like how do we communicate from the heart and the mind, like, in peace, in peace, all right, in peace. So thank you, Sarah, and please let them remind our audience again how are they gonna reach to you and how they can contact you.
Yeah, you can go to my website, optimistadventurer.com. There's an extra R in there. And I'm on Instagram and TikTok as well. And then on YouTube, it's Intuitive Journey with Sarah. And you'll see there's all my contact information is in there.
Perfect. And don't forget, she's going to be speaking globally. And we're both in this project called Start Over Movement. And she is one of the first, she's in one of the first group of people speaking in London, UK. And yeah, just tell us quickly about it again.
Yeah, on May 3rd in London, England, we are launching the Start Over movement, and I am in book one. And there's a number of authors. They're not all in book one, but they all have incredible stories. They're going to share a little bit and inspire people, and you can get in contact with these people. Incredible humans all over the world. But this will be an incredible live event where people can get together and feel inspired, feel motivated, find their heart voice,
Mm.
and really make a shift in their life. If you really want to start over and live life differently and live, then this is an amazing opportunity to take part in that experience.
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, connect with Sarah for book one. She's in book one and join her wait list at Start Over Movement Project. All right. Thank you, Sarah. And thanks, everybody. Thank you, Sarah, again.
Thank you for having me again. I had so much fun.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Till next time.